Council for December 12th to order at 3 p.m. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Council adopt the agenda for the regular Council meeting December 12th. As amended, to have item 6.1, the Community Vitality Advisory Committee recommendations, go immediately after item 5.1, Town of High River COVID-19 response delegation due to time constraints, as well as adding item 6.6, being an appointment to the Climate Change and Active Transportation Task Force.
Yeah, my motion, Mayor.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Consent agenda. Ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that the following are adopted by an omnibus motion in accordance with Council's procedure bylaw, the November 28th regular Council meeting minutes, November 28th special Council meeting minutes, and the strategic priorities chart.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Any public comments outside of the delegations? See none, hear none, so we will move straight into the first delegation, being the Town of High River COVID-19 response delegation. Grant, I see, is here, so you have the floor, Grant. Make sure we get the microphone on for you. Is that the right one? Yeah.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor Snodgrass and council members. My name is Grant Fraser, and I have with me Jan, both of Neighborhood East High River. Jan is going to hand out these envelopes to you, and they are documents addressed to each of you. These documents contain scientific research from CDC, Pfizer, Moderna, VAERS and SARS, expert virologists, epidemiologists, respiratory specialists, and lawyers, as well as psychologists, and references to the Canadian Charter, legal precedents, and the Nuremberg Code, outlining the laws that have been broken over the past 2 years. On page 3, under your name, you'll note the statement, notice agent is no to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. What is NOL? NOL is full of information and research from around the world that reveals the widespread impacts and harms from experimental shots, lack of transparency, breach of informed consent, and unscientific public health measures. Once fully educated, one can carefully examine their own role and contribution to the harms that have occurred, so that we can all work together to ensure nothing like this ever happens again to Canadians. This statement means that this notice obliges you to share this letter and contents of this package with every person above and below you in your chain of authority and within your workplace. It is incumbent upon you as entrusted officials to provide the information contained herein to any person requesting information from you on the topic of COVID-19 vaccinations, masking, and rapid testing, so that they may make informed consent decisions. By supplying you with this information, we want to ensure that what we all have lived through over this past 2 years will not happen again. It is incumbent upon you to take the time to read through the documents and familiarize yourself with the information enclosed. This is a notice of liability and is the first step in a process to ultimately hold accountable all those who created and implemented the unlawful mandates and those who accepted them and administered them in their establishments and positions of entrusted authority. Part of this NOL is a reminder to those in authority the existence and definition of informed consent. For those of you who don't know informed consent, it is an ethical and legal principle that ensures our autonomy and our right to make decisions regarding our health, which must be free of undue influence, free of duress or coercion in making the decision. Attached is the website link to the Physician's Standards of Practice and Informed Consent. Its purpose is to affirm a person's rights to determine what happens to their bodies, and it upholds your duty to provide enough information to make this informed decision. Consent must be voluntary. It must be given by somebody with a capacity to consent. Consent must be given by a person who is properly informed and freely given. Our courts have reaffirmed repeatedly our right to refuse treatment even when it is clear treatment is necessary to preserve our life or health. When explaining the consequences of refusal, those who are explaining the consequences must not create a perception of coercion in seeking consent. The reason why this is being presented to you is that as elected and entrusted officials to serve our community, it is incumbent upon you to educate yourself with all medical and scientific research available, not just as selective narrative. And yes, this research has changed over the period of the times that we have lived through the last 2 years. All web links to medical research and scientific studies and QR codes to inform yourselves is included in that package as well. So we implore you, as those entrusted with authority over others, to inform yourselves that you would respect the legal rights of others and be aware that you will be held accountable for what you have done and what you have failed to do. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thanks very much, Grant. Any questions from council? I see none. Thanks very much, Grant. Appreciate it. Thanks, Janet. Okay, we'll move on to item 6.1. Community Vitality Advisory Committee recommendations. I see Angela was back there. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I just want to start off by saying we started our November meeting with $25,479 left in our budget. But we have two requests that I bring to you with who asked for more than $2,000 from CVAC. Therefore, we have to request approval before we can spend the money. So they're two really kind of cool projects to kind of end our year off. The first is the Ecole Senator Riley Outdoor Classroom, who requested $10,000 to promote learning about ecology, biology, and agriculture. This project will not only provide a gathering space for students, but for the whole community. Our second project, and a project that I find pretty exciting myself, Kathy, who requested this, has been thinking about it for years, so I'm glad to see that it will hopefully come to light. And this one is the Utility Box Wrap Project, who has requested $12,500. This project will see 14 utility boxes that belong to the town of High River wrapped in historical photos from our community. This group plans to collaborate with Bill Holmes Sr. and the museum to select relevant and meaningful memories. We also granted the Foothills Folk Club $2,000 to help reboot their club in the 2022-2023 season. As a result, we are ending the 2022 calendar year with approximately $1,000 left from a budget of $70,364. So we would have spent over $69,000. On behalf of the Community Vitality Advisory Committee, I request that Council votes to allocate $10,000 to the Ecole Senator Riley Outdoor Classroom and $12,500 to the Utility Wrap Program from the Community Vitality Fund. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Angela. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I think these are both excellent programs, and I'm really looking forward to a positive result for you. But I would ask if this should be two separate motions, one for each grant.
Can I ask why?
Just because it's clearer and cleaner. It's okay if you want to do it under one, but I'd like to see it as two.
I don't care. We can do two. I'll make you do both of them. I'll ask, no other questions. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council award funding of $12,500 to the utility box wrap project.
Thank you. You have my motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. I'm going to ask for another motion from Councillor Kinghorn that CVAC award funding to Equal Senator Riley Outdoor Classroom Project in the amount of $10,000 and the remaining funding of $979 be carried over to the 2023 CVAC funding allocation.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. You have my motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Angela.
You guys have a great day.
You too. Where am I at now? Ursula. Where did Ursula get to? I know she's here, so there she is.
So I have brought a little presentation. The reason I'm here today is because Community Futures Highwood is going through a change of articles of association. And I wanted to provide some background on that, why we're doing this, and why we are actually asking you to please authorize CAO Chris Prosser to sign a shareholder resolutions to that effect. So if you would please go to the next slide. Okay, so we basically, like I said, I wanted to give you a short background on why this came about. So the old articles were written before the pandemic and definitely did not allow for certain technological advances, for instance. So we still don't have in there that we can have hybrid meetings, that kind of stuff. Really needed to update them. Also, they were not as clear in terms of processes and rules that we have. So, what kind of meetings, what kind of majorities are needed, that kind of stuff. That's standard in articles of association or bylaws. And we really, really need to update our board structure. And I'll get to that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And also wanted to make sure that there's full transparency in our organization, as I should probably have started a little bit more for those of you who are not familiar with Community Futures. We are a nonprofit federally funded that supports rural entrepreneurs. And our support consists not only of assistance with business planning and financial projections and all that stuff that we do free of charge, but and programming, but also of lending money. And we have currently about $6.5 million out in lending dollars. So that's a fairly sizable portfolio. And only half of our board is aware of what loans we have or not. Sometimes even less than half of our board. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll go into that a little bit more. We are, like I said, a nonprofit, and as such have a governing board. So it's not a committee, it's an actual governing board that's supposed to set strategic direction, that has fiscal responsibility. So I, as the executive director, I report to the board. And the board is also supposed to monitor our progress and really is the governing entity of our organization. So on the slide you'll see it talks about an investment review committee. So our current shareholder structure is that every shareholder appoints 2 members to our board. One is an elected official, and then one is and that's Councillor Walsh in our case, and one is a member at large. Only the members at large currently are sitting on what we call the Investment Review Committee, which is the section of the board that actually looks at the loans, approves them, and understands what how our loan portfolio is put together. So that means all the elected officials, we did that on purpose so that there was arm's length, all the elected officials do not know what is going on the loan side. If you can go to the next slide, please. actually 2. Okay, one more. So we have some challenges right now with the current board. The first one is continuity, because half of our board consists of elected officials every time an election comes around. You can guess what happens. Last time we lost 2/3 of our board, the time before that 3/4, which is very, very difficult if you have a governing board to keep that going. And I already talked to the governing board side. Size, we have 10 shareholder regions. So if I have a full board, I have 20 people on the board. And I'm sure you can appreciate that that makes for very long meetings and very hard decision-making process. Now, in fairness, we haven't had 20 members on the board for a while, but even with a 14, 16 member strong board, that's fairly large and a bit unwieldy. We are unable to recruit for specific skills. So with a governing board, and especially one that's involved in lending, it would be really wonderful if we had access to maybe a lawyer or an accountant. And we are unable to recruit at this point of time for those skills. And last but not least, we have vacancies on the board. Again, this is not to point any fingers or anything. I understand that municipal administration, that's not their priority to find us board member, nor should it have to be. Really, this is the responsibility of the organization in my point of view anyways. And High River has had full representation for some time, but we have other regions where that's not the case. And then we are short usually members at large, which make up the investment review committee, which means we don't have that many people on that committee that actually needs to decide on loans. That's a problem. So those are all reasons that we were looking at changing not just the articles themselves, but also how the board is put together for that reason. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So what was proposed to the board and voted, accepted by the board, is that we put different guidelines together for the new board. So a maximum of 9 board members, keeping it smaller, keeping meetings more concise and hopefully shorter. All the board members will be shareholders, so actually the regions wouldn't be shareholders anymore. Right now you are the shareholder as a region. In practicality, it wouldn't make a difference. The region doesn't usually contribute financially to us. We had one project that is currently running where we have, it's Smart Start, it's an incubator program where for the first time in a very long time, we asked for funding of $1,500 and were granted that from High River, from the town of High River, but usually you do not have a financial contribution to our organization. And with this change, like I said, all the board members will actually be the shareholders, and that is the big thing, the big change. All members will be at-large members, so that means everybody will be very, very clearly involved in all decisions on the board level, so there will be full transparency, no more half the board knows, half the board doesn't know. And it will be a 3-year term. And we are still planning to get members from each of our service regions. The service region doesn't change. The level of service we provide to the region doesn't change. It just changes how the board is being recruited. And like I said, board and IRC Investment Review Committee are the same. And we continue to collaborate with you. So as much as you want us to, of course. But really, like I said, the service doesn't change. The idea is that on a monthly basis, we send out a bulletin. Here is what's been happening in our organization. Here's how we're servicing your region. And I think you'll probably even get more information, no offense, but probably more information than you would right now because it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, so to say. I've just called myself a horse, but you know. You will get the information that you need. Okay, and then the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we already presented this to the board. The board did vote in favor of it. That said, our relationship with all of our shareholders is very important, and therefore I very respectfully request that you do relinquish your share in CFH, in our organization, as per the board's decision. A quick note to the share. So there is a shareholder agreement from 1995 that was signed by the town of High River. There was one share in the worth $1. There was never a share certificate or issued, so there is no physical share certificate. And like I said, it was for the value of $1. So do you have any questions?
Sorry, Ursula, why would we release the share, or why do you want us to release?
Because with the new articles of association, the new shareholders will basically be the actual board members, right? That way, it makes it much simpler. We do not have the administrative overhead that we have right now, both for ourselves as well as for your administration, right? And we can recruit board members for skills and still within the different service regions that we have.
Okay. Is that the end?
That is the end.
That's
Well,
the end
there is one more slide if you
Okay.
want. We can go to that. So just to give you an idea of where we are at in the process, you are actually my last scheduled presentation. I have had 7 regions already going along with this. And once we have enough of them gathered, then I will, assuming that everybody agrees, then I will send this off to corporate registries, or our lawyer will. And then we wait for approval. In the meantime, we have, as per the direction of the board, I have put together a selection committee, and I just got verification that everybody's on there. And they will select a new board. The current board would stay on until we get approval from corporate registries. At that point of time, the newly selected board will come into power, and there will be a seamless transition so that we're not without a board.
Okay, well, we're gonna discuss relinquishing this share. Does anybody have any problem with doing that you know of? Pardon me? I can't hear you. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only question was the estimated time frame to transition the current board into the new format.
That very much depends on your decision today, and then the corporate registries turnaround time. If High River Town Council should vote in favor of this today, as soon as I get the signed shareholder resolution, I have enough to send off to corporate registries. So I'm hoping to get that out before Christmas. And then it really depends how long they take. I've been told anywhere between 1 to 3 months, and then the transition would be made.
And so you're indicating then that the conversation has been had with the majority of the stakeholders
Correct.
now?
Yes, and
Thank you.
7 of them have agreed.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm a little hesitant to do it, just, hey, do it, just so, and you want it done today. I'm a little hesitant on like relinquishing a share. I don't know, it sounds like a bigger deal to me than just, hey, get rid of it, but anybody else? Like if council's okay with doing it, Chris, help me out. Like, what is this share? Is it meaningless? Is it,
It's,
why did we have it in the, like,
Really good question.
you know,
why are we, it's a buck?
it-
Do we get our buck back?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
you know, I think it was more ceremonial than anything else. It was
I
something
love
to
that stuff.
It was there to create the community future structure back in the mid 1990s, and that was kind of the corporate structure back in the day. And I think, you know, there was some desire to have government oversight, likely historically, as part of that program. But I think it's kind of matured to the point, and that it may no longer be required, considering that we also have a hard time sometimes getting volunteers to volunteer for that position from council, right? So You know, we don't see any issues with relinquishing the share from an administration side of things. And it will be putting kind of the control of the business aspect of things, of business, supporting businesses, back in control of those people that participate directly in business, if that makes sense.
So will we still have to have an appointee on Community
No.
Futures?
No, so basically, that's exactly it. There would be no more obligation.
Merry Christmas, Brenda.
There would be no more obligation on on town council to provide board members.
Okay.
But
The-
they might want.
Hey, you can put your name up. They're looking for volunteers.
No, my hands.
Yep.
Yeah, so elected officials will still be eligible for the board, just in their capacity as a private citizen, not as an elected
Correct.
official. And by the way, in terms of oversight, I should mention this as well. We are being overseen by the federal government. Our funding, our operational funding is provided by the federal government, and as such, we have to report, in our case, on a biannual basis to, you know, with all of our KPIs and all of our financial statements. Our financial statements are audited every year and need to be submitted, so there is very clear oversight. The towns themselves, the shareholder regions, have never really provided oversight. It was more a way of putting the board together. In today's day and age, it's just not that practical anymore. And really, the other thing that I didn't mention is it takes on average somebody 18 to 24 months to understand our organization. It is not a 2-3 months turnaround time. And then having that continuity is really damaging to the strategic direction.
Okay, thanks, Ursula. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. You good on making the motion here? I support it. I mean, this was a governance construct. It wasn't really anything that tied us from a fiduciary capacity or an administrative capacity with the organization. So I've got no problem
Okay.
with it and be happy to.
We'll do it today, yeah. Councillor Barton?
Thank you, Mayor. Ursula, right? Is this the first time, like, because there's other community future organizations?
Correct.
I don't know if they're called, well, obviously not Community Futures Highwood, but are the other ones doing similar things, or are we the first one to kind of be doing this?
We are not. We are not. It's all over the place. There are 27 offices in Alberta alone, over 260 in all of Canada. There are some with a structure like we are proposing, actually Centre West, which is the one in Cochrane. They have the exact same structure, and that's what we modeled it on. It's working very well for them. There are others that still have the same structure that we are trying to get away from. So it's all over the place.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk. The council relinquish the Town of High River share with Community Futures Highwood.
I'll make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, questions, comments? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ursula. 6.2, Strategic Priorities Chart and Work Program Update. Chris?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Well, as all of you could probably remember, we did sit in a room last Monday for about 4 hours, trying to keep everybody in control. Entertaining as it was, we did get some work done. And, you know, from a year kind of basis, when you take a look back at what this council's initial strategic priorities were, there's been quite a bit of progress made. Quite a bit of decisions made by this council around the table for 12 months in. That is quite significant. And when you take a look at our top 5 from last year, being the Riverside sales strategy, Riverside and can't remember the last part. Anyway, the Safford Properties sales, the town plan, pedestrian bridge, as well as the recreation future discussion about what the recreation center would look like. We've all moved those on. Those priorities have moved on. The one that's lingering still is the town plan, because it is still a work in progress, and it's achieved several milestones. So when you take a look at our new priorities that are before you today for consideration, includes the town plan still being on that list, and moving it into that draft policy framework. The aquatic facility expansion remains on the list, but it's different now. It's no longer recreation direction. We've set the direction, and we've set the ball in motion about expanding the aquatic facility on the existing site. And we've also added development management, outlining the process and doing that review. And then event program as well as being kind of new, a new item that's come forward from this council as well to move forward with. And finally, the new one that moves up from the previous update in October that we're proposing here is the public workshop. It's become clear and evident that our public workshop does not meet our current needs. We have some safety issues. We have some accommodation issues associated with the size of the facility and the number of staff that we actually have, and that it's time to be looking for that permanent home in a much more suitable location than in a very visible neighborhood around a commercial and seniors area and residential areas. So, you know, when we take a look at those priorities, those are the 5 that would be moving forward, as well as there's several other changes throughout that chart that I won't go into. They're too numerous to kind of mention, but there is progress being made. Decisions being happy, and I think that's kind of something to be patting yourselves on the back about the progress that's been made and the decisions that you all kind of come together to make and discuss. So based upon that, Mayor Snodgrass, the recommendation is to move forward with the updated chart for the 2023 year and continue with our strategic quarterly meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Questions from council? I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Jones that council adopt the updated top 5 strategic priorities as follows: the town plan, the aquatic facility expansion, development management, event program, public workshop, and that council adopt the updated operational strategies as outlined in the strategic priorities chart, and further that council adopt the updated work program as presented.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll give you that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Sorry, Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just to rewind, I should push my button earlier, but Chris mentioned the work that we do as council sitting and deliberating on these things, but I want to put it back to administration through Chris and to everybody else that works on this stuff. It doesn't happen just because of us. It happens because of the work that your team puts in and gets us the information so that we can make decisions. So this, yeah, very much isn't a council thing. This is a council and administration and us as an entire team getting these things done for the community. So thank you.
Point well stated. 6.3, 2023 interim operating budget. David?
I will keep my comments very brief. In support of this agenda item, I have provided a formal request for decision along with the entire 2022 budget package that you approved last February 14th, 2022. If you recall from last year, the MGA provides for the adoption of an interim budget to support ongoing operations into a new fiscal year as the town completes its budget deliberations. This request for decision seeks approval for an interim budget, interim 2023 budget totaling $25.2 million, or 75% of the approved 2022 budget to take effect on January 1st, 2023. Commencing mid-January, administration will bring to council over 4 successive meetings, various briefings on key 2023 budget assumptions, including municipal taxation, salaries, wages, and benefits, other revenues and expenses, and plans surrounding tangible capital assets and reserve positions. Finally, on February 13th, 2023, administration will be seeking formal adoption of the 2023 budget, at which time this interim budget will no longer be in effect. That concludes my comments.
Thanks, David. This is something we've done more years than not since the last 9 years. But, any questions from council? Ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that council adopts the 2023 interim operating budget in the amount of $25,149,593.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have my motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Tree removal, Darlene?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present recommendations and a plan outlining the cost for the removal of 5 poplar trees. The recommendations are in relation to poplar trees located at Pioneer Square, 120 McLeod Trail Southwest, and 936 9th Street Southwest. Initially, 2 trees were identified for removal due to recent damage to property as a result of limb failures and the potential for future damage if parts of the trees were to fail. Administration is recommending the additional removal of 3 trees, 1 at Pioneer Square and an additional 2 at 936 9th Street Southwest. Recommendation is based on similar characteristics identified in the 3 additional trees in association with the 2 previously identified, and the potential for additional failures and risk of damage to persons or property if trees remain after the removal of the adjacent trees. Replacement costs are not included in this request and will be determined in the remediation plan after consultation with residents as part of the 2023 operating budget. The cost for the removal is $20,000, which includes removal of the trees, stumps, wood disposal, and contingency. Tree Protection Policy 12-100-00 supports the recommendation for removal of any public tree when no reasonable alternative exists for reasons such as public safety concerns, the tree is dead or declining, or a repeated history of utility conflicts, to name a few. Council may wish to consider reviewing this policy and increasing the importance of risk management and impacts on safety to people and property. If approved by Council, administration will proceed with a communication plan to notify businesses and residents of the removals, schedule removal dates with consideration given to business hours and/or special events, and coordinate potential road closures and final site cleanup. The longer desired outcome is to only remove trees that are in decline in relation to health or have defects present that pose an immediate risk to person or property. Requests for removal of healthy trees should only proceed when all alternatives have been exhausted and funds can be derived outside the annual tree maintenance budget. Administration will return to Council in January with a recommendation to address all trees that have been identified as potential risk. Administration recommends that Council approve the removal of 3 poplars at 936 9th Street Southwest and the removal of 2 poplars at 120 McLeod Trail Southwest. Administration is seeking approval of funding to complete the required work. And I'm open to any questions.
Thanks, Darlene. Just so that I'm clear, when I go on Google Earth, or Google period, 936, I'm seeing 4 poplars all in a row there. Is one gone?
Yes, that's an
Okay.
old Google
That's a-
image. We,
okay.
those trees were actually listed on a tree removal list, so
Okay.
we had started the process of removing trees at that
Okay.
address.
Okay, perfect. And then the 120, that's the 2 that are just directly in behind
Correct.
Daily Mail and those,
Yes.
the 2 big ones that are hanging over that building. Okay, they're huge. Any other questions from council? See none, hear none. Ask for a motion from Councillor Smith that council authorize the removal, including stump removal of the 5 poplar trees, 3 located at 936 9th Street Southwest and 2 located at 120 McLeod Trail Southwest. And that council approve funding of $20,000 for removal of these trees and stumps.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Darlene. Nancy with the Aquatics Expansion Working Group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of the Aquatics Expansion Project, a working group will be established to provide advice and recommendations on the design, construction, scope, and schedule of the project. The group will ensure that council's vision is being fulfilled and will act as a liaison between the architectural consultant and the town. The working group will not have authority to make final decisions, but will provide informed recommendations to council, who will have final approval on the project. Administration has developed a terms of reference detailing the requirements and obligations of the working group members. Administration is seeking approval of the terms and appointment of 4 council members to the working group. Administration will also identify representatives from the Aquatics staff, the BSRC user groups, Inclusion Foothills, and the community at large. All members will have the same responsibilities. It is intended that the working group will formally stand up in January. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Nancy. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. This question is more through Chris. Is there any problem with 4 council members on a board like this constituting quorum or anything like that? Are we clean?
Yeah, no, there isn't, because it's a recommending body. All decisions will have to be returned back to council for final endorsement.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Is there a reason why 4 was chosen as a number from council? If there's 4 people there and there's 7 of us, is that not a lot? Or is there a justification and understanding of the number?
Yeah, I think originally we were targeting 3. When we sat down and asked for volunteers, we had several interested, and with all these working groups and task force, the mayor is always ex officio. So from that perspective, we felt that it was prudent, because this is such a high council priority, to have that number of 4. In previous experiences working on design of a community facility like this, it is normal to have all of council participate at times. So it is a big decision. It's a big expense of money, and it's requires the input as many people as possible as you go through the design phase. So that's how we got to 4.
It's also one of those things, Councillor, that as we've seen with the town plan task force, the chances of all 4 of us being at any one meeting is, well, you know, ever. Unless you really want some donuts. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Jones that council adopt the attached terms of reference to establish a working group for the Aquatics expansion project, and that Councillors Jenny Jones, Brenda Walsh, Jamie Kinghorn, and Mayor Craig Snodgrass as ex officio be appointed to the Aquatics expansion working group, and that council direct administration to seek community members to join the working group as per the terms of reference.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll give you that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then at item 6.6, this is one that I think we missed the last meeting, is that right? And that's just to appoint Councillor Barton to the Climate Change and Active Transportation Task Force. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that Councillor Barton be appointed to the Climate Change and Active Transportation Task Force.
I'm sure Councillor Barton will do an excellent job. You have my motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You're bound. Yes. I don't wanna. Item 7.1, the Rimrock feedlot standing item. I'll let Councillor Nychuk start. You're up.
Sorry, I keep knocking it against my laptop. Apologize. Maybe I should keep those glasses. All right, bear with me, guys, as I go through a few things. We'll start with AEP. Continuing to work on understanding the timing with them as far as where the application from Tidewater is with Alberta Environment. So that's still, let's call it an outstanding item to come back to you guys on. And what that timing is just where we might have some action or activity. As we go forward, in my opinion, there's still not a lot of positivity that surrounds this project. So from my chair, I look at it, that's the intervenor status might be something that we want to do, because the point where we got involved, statement of concern wasn't something we could do. That's past its timeline already. So that intervenor is the next piece we can do with the Alberta government. Another piece, and Mayor Snodgrass might want to add to this, with AEP was the letter of support that had gone around in the community, in print, that the mayor had provided a letter of support for the biodigester, which is entirely false. AEP confirmed that there was no letter that was attached with the application. They also stated that the letter would have no influence on their decision. Again, opinion from my chair is that, yes, things like that have cause and effect, especially with a mayor that has gone through a couple of things in the last number of years, the flood being one, and the work on coal mining in the province another, where he has developed a very positive reference to his seat as mayor of High River, and is held in pretty good regard in our province, right? Hats off to Craig for all that work he's done on those things. A letter of support carries a lot of weight from his chair, in my opinion. So it being there, just it stating that there was this letter was enough that it has effect. So there is no letter. AEP confirms that, and they also say it doesn't have an effect. So I don't know, Craig, if you want to, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to add anything on the AEP piece right now. I'm going to move from there to some comments on Tidewater.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So moving from AEP to Tidewater, and again, we'll just talk about that letter of support. There was a virtual meeting that Craig and I were scheduled for. Unfortunately, I had business that took me away, so Craig attended solely on his own in my absence, and he brought that letter up again. They verbally responded that there was no letter. I believe the ask, Mr. Mayor, was that they provide a written confirmation that there was never a letter, but they have yet to provide a piece like that, which is seemingly the position they come from on a lot of things. Very non-committal and what I'm referring to as 100%. If you ask them about the effects that the biodigester may or may not have, it's always non-committed. This may, or this should, or this could, or this might, or there's a lot of that language that leaves a lot for interpretation. That doesn't make me very comfortable at all. Like I've said before, this project could be built and be fantastic, entirely unimpactful for the community, but as it sits right now, again, from my position, is that it's nothing but negative at this point. Talking with Tidewater, they apparently are willing to speak to us as a council in some fashion. Mayor Snodgrass can confirm that. So part of our diligence in following this through, I would like that to happen, for them to speak to all of us and not just to myself or the mayor. It's incredibly important that you guys are involved in the journey. I appreciate the support to this point, but I think you all need to be involved as we move forward too. That's Tidewater. Again, Mayor Snodgrass, if you want to jump in because you were in that meeting, if there's anything you want to add. Otherwise, I'll just keep moving through my touch points.
You keep going and then
Okay. Okay. In regards to the county, we were to speak with the county on Rimrock and Tidewater biodigester, and part of it, I just wanted, at that IMC meeting, I wanted an update what was happening with Rimrock in terms of how they were handling their waste. Because since they sat with us here at council, they indicated that they were working on some things to improve the situation and the smell. I haven't heard or seen anything yet, so before going back to Rimrock and saying come back to us. I was hoping that the county might have had some direct contact with them on progress there. So upcoming IMC meeting based on the one that was canceled previously in December here. I'm also was advised that Tidewater will be going to a county meeting sometime in late January, that they're actually going to be present at a county meeting. So interested just to see what comes out of that. I have no intention of going. That's county business. That's them and Tidewater. So I'll just be looking to what comes out in the media or having a look at their minutes after and seeing what was there. We'll have our own opportunity to talk with Tidewater. So from a community perspective, there is a group that has formed from our municipality, from the town, and from residents of Foothills County that have concern about the biodigester. Some of them are concerned about the smell. Some of them are concerned about what effects the biodigester will actually have. Mixed concerns there, meaning from people wanting it absolutely never to go ahead, and the feedlot to be shut down from that angle, to people that are more they want to be educated and they want to be sure that our communities will go unaffected if something like this goes forward. So they do have a Facebook page right now, a website, an informational website is coming. It's not up and active yet. I think once I have that website, I'll share it with council. I think that's probably a better conduit of information from this group than what happens on Facebook. I'm always quite leery about Facebook communication. It's got its pluses and minuses for sure. That group is also doing some fundraising to help in their initiatives with what's going on. So that's a bit about what's happening in the community, entirely separate from us as a council and what we may or may not be doing as a municipality. And then in terms of council, just continuing the education piece. I had talked, Councillor Smith, about your husband at some point, if I could, not to bring it up in a public meeting, but I put a fire under him, so to speak. If he can find some time to join us at a cow, we could get him on the schedule. And I've had the opportunity, guys, to speak with Wim directly, and incredibly knowledgeable guy, and coming from no point of influence in either way, other than he's the fine husband of Councillor Smith. So he'd be happy to provide us information from his professional experience.
He just needs a date, and he'll be here. So
Yeah?
we just have to give him
I
one.
was kind of leaning on what date might work for him, so we could probably set that
Okay.
up for the first meeting in January if he's
Sounds good.
if he's available.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The one thing I did want to bring up from a council perspective, I'd like to work with administration on crafting a letter of concern to the BC Utilities Commission. At this point, I won't call it a letter of opposition because I still think we're in that education stage, and as much as I am extremely concerned about this thing being built, I also don't feel that I have everything that I need if I had the green button to push to let it go ahead or not. So, but I do want to start some process, and that letter of concern to BC Utilities Commission would be in a short little construct. Our concerns on what could potentially happen there, because we don't have any concrete information from Tidewater on the aspects of what can be emitted or will be emitted from that facility if it's built. So that would be the concern letter that I would like us to endorse to BC Utilities, just to express that concern, so that they know that the neighboring municipality is looking at it, and that we hope that they would look at it through a pretty finite lens as well. So the project comes under the guise of green energy and sustainability and all those really catch things that we're all concerned about right now while we're trying to keep the planet whole. But there are also other impacts and avenues that are at play. So although all those nice green words are there, there can sometimes be some underlying things that aren't so positive. So if you guys will allow, I'll work with Chris and some people from the admin team on crafting something that we will bring back for endorsement to the next council meeting. That's my update, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Nychuk. So I'll give 2 seconds here for, Michael alluded to the meeting I had with Tidewater on Friday. And I'm not sold one way or another on this thing. I'm sitting here, I'm gonna ride the fence for a while before I make my decision because, I can see the possible negative impacts to us, but I can also see that if the project comes to fruition the way they say it's going to, and with what happens in Ontario and everything else, like if these things work, well, then there's, could be a benefit to it. But as I stated to Tidewater, what my concern is what does this mean directly to High River? What are the impacts going to be? Is the smell going to increase? Is it going to decrease? Obviously, anything we can do to decrease the smell is a positive. The flare stack, how often will that be going? They say very, very rarely, only under kind of undue circumstances, but I don't know. The ponds are supposed to be mainly dry ponds, so there's supposed to not be any extra smell come off of them, but I don't know. What I do know is that the company that builds these is out of Ontario, DLS Biogas. This is the largest biodigester they've ever built, probably the largest one that'll be in Canada. This is also the first one that's going to be, I won't say solely fed by an agricultural operation, because there is stuff that's coming out of Calgary that will be added to this, but most of these biodigesters out in Ontario, around the city of Toronto and stuff, they're all municipal waste, is how they really roll. So I don't know how much of a pilot project this is in the agricultural world, right? So like I said, I'm sitting on the fence, listening to both sides and see where this lands. The gas, Michael and I had questions about the gas being piped to BC. That's not the case. The gas will be going directly into the ATCO pipeline. Where Fortis BC comes into play is on a credit program, and I think it's through carbon credits or whatever else that Fortis BC can buy the credits back from Tidewater. And that's it's basically a paper transaction of some kind of money, but again, I don't know how that works either. So they are supposed to be putting up, and I just emailed Denny again to see when this website's going to be going live, because Tidewater's got a dedicated website to this project to give their information on it. As well, he said they will have some type of banner on the front there that has the apology for them stating that they had a letter of support, which they did not. So I did request that they publicly apologize and clarify that so that I quit getting beat with a hammer for no reason this time. So hopefully that'll get there. If the website goes live, then we'll let you know. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Thank you, Councillor Nychuk, for an excellent report. I may have missed it, but you talked about a Facebook page, and I didn't hear the name and the website of this new group that's formed.
I'll get you the name because I haven't gone to it. I'm not a Facebook troll. Sorry. So I'm told it's there. I didn't mean you were. But I just
Not anymore. You
don't have. Yeah, I don't like getting drawn into that. As you guys know, I have a council page that doesn't see a whole lot of activity. So if I do anything, I'm just forwarding stuff that you guys put out or the town puts out. So I'll get you the name in short order, and I'll email it to everybody this afternoon.
There's a GoFundMe page for legal fees to appeal Rimrock Biodigester project. So I'm kind of. I heard about this before, that there might be a class action lawsuit to fight back on this, so the GoFundMe's up and running since December 2nd, it says, so lots going on with it, so
If I can,
Yep.
yeah. On that note, because of that, I've been really cautious where I've been wading in. Council and the town of High River is one thing, this other group is entirely another, and I don't want to blur that line with anybody in the community. We're here representing the community in the fashion that we do. That group is representing the community as well, but not from a municipal perspective, so I've just been really quite clean and clear and cautious on that one, so.
And the county meeting, just if you wanted to know, is on January 25th, Tidewater in the county. So. Right? 25th? Yeah, I think that's what it is. Pretty sure that's what they said. 99.999% sure. No commitment. Board and committee reports. Anybody from council? Nothing? Board and committee minutes. There are the October 19th Museum of the Highwood meeting minutes. And public comments. Is there any comments from the public before we move on? See none, hear none. Council correspondence requiring action. Request for welcome letter from Mayor Snodgrass for the 2023 Foothills Freeze Ringette Tournament. More than happy to do that. Ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Council direct administration to work with Mayor Snodgrass in preparing a welcome letter for the 2023 Foothills Freeze Ringette Tournament.
Yeah, my motion, Mayor.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Donation request from Habitat for Humanity regarding lunch with the mayor as a donation. I'll be.
Do you want me to speak to this one? Just
Yeah.
to give a little
Sure,
bit of history?
please.
All right, so we did receive a request for there to be a donation of an auction item for the Habitat for Humanity. And the request has been for the town to put up an auction item for lunch with the mayor. So administration would essentially work with Habitat for Humanity to develop a certificate so that that would be placed into the auction. Once we find out, if we go down this path, once we find out who the winner was, we would coordinate with them to schedule the lunch with Mayor Snodgrass.
$2 will probably win it. Fall off your wall at Kinghorn. That $10 bill, me and you. I'll get Chris's credit card. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that administration will work with Habitat for Humanity to set up a lunch with the mayor once donations are given out.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Council correspondence, letter from Minister Ellis regarding victim services, CPSA follow-up to High River, update on physician assessment process. Done. Meeting adjourned, 4:02. Thank you very much. See you later, bye.